Firearm suppressors, often called silencers, are devices that attach to the end of a gun's barrel. Their main purpose is to reduce the noise and recoil produced when a firearm is discharged, but it's important to note that they don't make guns completely silent. Instead, they lower the sound to safer levels, making shooting less jarring for both the shooter and bystanders. Suppressors are considered important safety tools. By muffling the sharp crack of gunfire, they help protect shooters' hearing and reduce noise pollution at ranges and in rural areas. Even with a suppressor, shooters often still wear hearing protection, but the risk of permanent hearing damage is significantly reduced. Inside a suppressor, a series of metal baffles work to slow and cool the expanding gases that follow a bullet out of the barrel. This process lessens the intensity of the gunshot's bang and can also slightly reduce recoil, making firearms more comfortable and manageable to shoot. Short-barreled rifles, or SBRs, are another category of regulated firearms. These are rifles with barrels shorter than 16 inches, making them more compact and easier to maneuver in tight spaces. SBRs are popular among enthusiasts for their portability and versatility, especially in situations where a full-length rifle would be cumbersome. However, their shorter barrels do not increase power. In fact, they often result in reduced bullet velocity compared to standard rifles. Both suppressors and SBRs are subject to strict federal regulation under the National Firearms Act of 1934. To legally own one, individuals must undergo a thorough background check, register the item with the government, and pay a $200 tax stamp for each device. This process can take several months to complete. Supporters of suppressor and SBR ownership argue that these regulations are outdated and place unnecessary burdens on responsible, law-abiding citizens. They believe suppressors should be as easy to purchase as earmuffs or other common safety equipment. On the other hand, opponents worry that making suppressors and SBRs more accessible could make it easier for criminals to obtain and misuse them, potentially complicating law enforcement efforts and public safety. The ongoing debate over suppressors and short-barreled rifles highlights the challenge of balancing public safety with the rights of gun owners, a complex issue that has shaped American firearms policy for nearly a century and continues to spark passionate discussion today. In the opening months of 2025, House Republicans unveiled a sweeping legislative initiative aimed at fundamentally reshaping federal firearms regulation. Their proposal sought to remove suppressors, short-barreled rifles, SBRs, and similar items from the National Firearms Act, a law that has governed these devices since 1934. This move was not just a minor adjustment, it was a bold attempt to treat these items the same as standard rifles and shotguns, eliminating the special restrictions that had long set them apart. The plan would have far-reaching consequences, ending the ATF's lengthy waiting periods, fingerprinting requirements, and the $200 tax stamp that gun owners have faced for generations. Supporters hailed it as the most significant rollback of federal gun control in decades, arguing that the NFA's restrictions were outdated and burdensome in today's context. Proponents, including Representative Andrew Clyde, insisted that suppressors are primarily safety devices that protect hearing, and that the rules around SBRs are arbitrary, with little impact on public safety. The push for deregulation was also fueled by backlash to the Biden administration's controversial pistol brace rule, which had reclassified millions of previously legal firearms as SBRs overnight, sparking outrage among gun owners and advocacy groups. To maximize their chances, Republicans attached the full deregulation measure to a budget reconciliation bill, a strategic move that allowed them to bypass the Senate filibuster and avoid a likely Democratic blockade. Gun rights organizations mobilized their supporters nationwide, flooding congressional offices with phone calls, emails, and petitions, urging lawmakers to support the sweeping changes. In a historic vote, the House passed the bill with full deregulation, marking a major victory for gun rights advocates and setting the stage for a fierce national debate over the future of federal firearms laws. The Senate's budget reconciliation process hit a wall with the Byrd Rule, which blocks non-budgetary policy changes. Democrats challenged the NFA provision, arguing its main effect was policy, not budget. The Senate parliamentarian agreed, ruling that full deregulation's budget impact was incidental. This meant the provision was stripped from the bill. Republicans couldn't override the ruling without 60 votes. The decision was a major setback, ending hopes for full NFA deregulation via a simple majority. The episode highlighted how Senate rules can derail even popular or high-profile legislation. The fight now shifted to what, if anything, could survive the Senate's procedural gauntlet. After the parliamentarians' ruling, Republicans pivoted to a new strategy: eliminate the $200 NFA tax, but keep the rest of the regulations. This approach focused solely on the fiscal aspect, making it more likely to pass under reconciliation rules. Senator Cornyn and others quickly redrafted the bill to zero out the tax on suppressors, SBRs, and similar items. While background checks and registration would remain, removing the tax would make these items more accessible. Gun rights advocates saw this as a meaningful, if partial, victory. The debate shifted from deregulation to whether the government should keep taxing these items. Republicans worked quickly to finalize the new bill, aiming to pass it before their deadline. The focus was now on removing a financial barrier, not the regulatory framework itself. Gun rights groups like Gun Owners of America and the NRA were instrumental in shaping the legislation, pushing for full deregulation from the start. Their grassroots campaigns pressured lawmakers to expand the bill beyond a simple tax cut. When the Senate blocked full deregulation, some members felt let down, but the groups quickly pivoted to support tax elimination. They kept their base engaged, urging continued pressure on senators to pass the revised bill. This advocacy ensured the issue stayed front and center in Congress. The episode showed both the power and limits of grassroots mobilization in shaping federal policy. Even after setbacks, these groups remained key players in the legislative fight. Democrats opposed the Republican proposals from the outset, viewing them as a dangerous rollback of gun safety laws. They argued the NFA keeps dangerous weapons out of easy circulation, and that weakening it would increase gun violence. Democratic leaders framed the bill as a giveaway to the gun lobby, invoking fears of criminals using suppressed, short-barreled rifles. Their strategy combined public condemnation with procedural tactics, ultimately leading to the parliamentarians' ruling. Even after the pivot to tax elimination, Democrats argued the tax was a useful deterrent. They promised a tough floor fight, forcing Republicans to rely on their narrow majority. The debate became a high-stakes clash over public safety, gun rights, and the limits of legislative power. The 2025 NFA reform push drew heavily from two long-standing bills, the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act. The Hearing Protection Act aimed to treat suppressors as ordinary accessories, available after a standard background check. Supporters framed it as a public health measure, citing European countries with looser suppressor laws. The Short Act sought to deregulate SBRs, suppressors, and similar items, targeting what supporters saw as arbitrary distinctions in gun law. When Republicans moved on NFA reform, they used these bills' language, allowing for a quick, coordinated push. Though full deregulation failed, these acts remain the legislative blueprint for future reform efforts. By October 2025, the fight in Congress had narrowed to a single contentious issue: eliminating the NFA tax, a decades-old levy on certain firearms and accessories that had long been a flashpoint in the national gun debate. With Republicans racing against a tight legislative deadline, and Democrats presenting a unified front in opposition, the atmosphere on Capitol Hill was tense and uncertain. Lawmakers on both sides recognized that the outcome could set a precedent for future gun policy battles. But, even as the federal debate raged, a new front was opening at the state level. Several states began passing laws that restricted the sharing of firearm-related information with minors, creating fresh and unexpected challenges for gun owners, advocacy groups, and even educators. The NRA and other gun rights organizations quickly mobilized, protesting these new state laws and warning of their far-reaching consequences. They argued that such restrictions could have a chilling effect on firearms safety education, limit free speech, and make it harder for families to teach responsible gun ownership to the next generation. Even if Congress succeeds in eliminating the federal tax, the reality for gun owners remains complicated. State-level restrictions could still block access to items like suppressors and short-barreled rifles, creating a confusing patchwork of regulations that vary dramatically from one state to the next. For gun owners, navigating this legal minefield has become increasingly difficult. What's legal in one state may be a felony in another, and the rules can change with each legislative session. As a result, the courts have become the next major battleground in the fight over gun rights and regulations. Advocacy groups on both sides are now challenging restrictive state laws, hoping to set new, legal precedents that could shape gun policy for years to come. The Senate's upcoming vote on the tax bill will be a pivotal moment, determining whether gun rights advocates secure a partial victory or face yet another setback in their ongoing campaign. No matter the outcome, it's clear that 2025 has already reshaped the national debate, forcing both sides to adapt their strategies and rethink their priorities. The year has highlighted not only the power of legislative procedure and legal action, but also the enduring influence of grassroots activism in America's ongoing gun policy wars. As the future remains uncertain, one thing is clear: the struggle over gun rights and regulations is far from over.